What's up, you guys? This is Rob from the Gay Guy Plays, and today on the Daily Grind, we're going to be chatting about the good, the bad, and the petty when it comes to Saryn's rework. Now, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, this is what I would consider to be a first impressions review. Legitimately, since the update has dropped, I put out one video that just was kind of an overview, and then after that, I've been playing Saryn non-stop. I've been adjusting builds, kind of figuring out how certain abilities interact with other abilities. I've been playing her on different tile sets, a lot in Onslaught, some survival, and some just general fissure missions and all of that kind of stuff, just to see exactly how she plays and gather my feelings about her, which are overall good, and also somewhat kind of like, this is a different playstyle than I'm used to with Saryn, and I'm not quite sure if I either don't like it, or do like it, or I'm just getting used to it. So that's kind of my current stance right now, but before we get into the main part of this video, I did want to drop a little bit of petty, because that was what this channel is exactly about, and I want to stop everybody ahead of time from leaving their crazy comments, because I know there are some people that just jump in, leave a comment, and like, I'm bitter and angry, and I'm like, please stop, because there are a couple of known bugs that are out there. One of them was attempted to be fixed on the most recent hotfix, however, I don't really feel like it's quite there, and I've left my feedback with DE. So one of the things that I want to stop you guys from getting your panties in a bunch about is spores not spreading to other targets afflicted with someone else's spores. Now, this is something that I definitely wanted to send onto their table just so that they're aware, but it tends to happen if you are not the host and are instead the client on the client side, and you're playing with the Saryn that is hosting. It feels like their spores just override your spores, and your spores do not seem to spread whatsoever. I don't understand exactly what the deal is, but I also don't want people going like, oh my god, my spores aren't spreading. What's the deal with this? DE, you've nerfed her into the ground because she can't spread spores anymore. I even had another content creator that I've been, chatting with, and they were saying that, oh, it's line of sight now. Spores are only by line of sight. And I'm like, that's definitely not what I'm seeing in my video. And I think that it had to deal with that particular bug. So before any of you guys start going to jump into the comments and be all angry and bitter, I really highly suggest that you play Saryn in a group that doesn't have another Saryn in there, or in a group where you are the host Saryn, because that's really where you'll tend to see her power and how like effective she is. Of course, there's bugs. DE will eventually fix it. Crossing my fingers. And another one is Saryn spores not resetting. So that's definitely been an issue. They did try to address it in the last patch, which was like, oh, when an enemy dies, it like goes in there, and then of course you can't pop any more spores or burst it because the target died, yada yada yada. There's still some issues with that don't necessarily have to do with targets dying or anything. So spores not resetting usage, that is definitely another bad bug that is in there, and I kind of wanted to get ahead of those comments before we actually jumped into the rest of the review. Now, let's move on to the good, because there is a lot of good, and some of them are very, very easy to see. And let's start with Molt. This one is fantastic. Molt, I mean, this is what Molt should have been to begin with, is to have that kind of scaling thing, just like Rhino's Iron Skin. But the thing that I'm actually really enjoying is the movement speed. They were right when they said that when you cast Molt, instinctively, you tend to cast Molt when you need to get the fuck out and want to leave a decoy. So when you drop a Molt and you're like, phew, it feels really, really freaking nice. Like, honestly, I wouldn't have even thought to add in the movement speed boost there. I would have just done kind of like the scaling health thing, but it's totally fantastic. Toxic Lash is another really, really good one, mainly because of the fact that our focus in combat now is to be spreading spores as much as you possibly can, and this one is fantastic with ranged weapons. I usually just go in with melee for Saryn, like pretty much all of the time, but now I'm actually using a lot of ranged weapons with her, because what I'll do is I'll catapult myself in the air, and then I'll look at the battlefield and see where my spores are, and then I'll kind of like shoot a little bit in the direction, pop a couple spores there, like do a little aim glide, pop a couple spores over there. So what's happening is, because of the fact that Toxic Lash has a guaranteed pop, you don't necessarily need to hit a spore. You just need to hit a target with a spore on. So what's happening is you're like spreading them far and wide. And I'm like, oh my god, this is so freaking fantastic. I love it on all that. And of course, the melee bonus is a great thing. I've even seen some people running around with Contagion Cloud. I mean, listen, to each his own. Let me know in the comments if you guys are liking your Contagion Cloud. Now, me personally, I'm like, it's just dusty. And last, of course, we have Miasma, which is... I'm liking it. I'm liking it a lot. Do I like it with Viral as opposed to Corrosive? I don't really, to be honest with you, I kind of don't really have strong feelings about Viral versus Corrosive on Miasma, but I will say right now they did bump up the range on it. I believe it was from 15 base to 20 base, and now with the current build I'm running, I've got 35 meters on it without my Exilus dedicated to range, but 38 meters on it. So that's almost a 40 meter attack with a very, very fast cast animation and a little bit of a stun at the beginning of it. So definitely juicy. I'm liking that a whole lot, and I like to use that in areas where either I jumped into a bad spot and I need a little bit of a stun, or there's just like a problematic cluster that I just need to get rid of. So definitely been having a lot of fun with that. Now, on to the last bit. This is where things get a little bit hairy, and I do want to kind of jump into a little bit of a talk in the simulacrum before we continue on with the rest of my feelings on this. So let's go ahead and do that now. So now we jump into what I deem to be the ugly. And I don't really feel like it's ugly, it's more like pugly. You know, it's actually cute, but it's only cute because it's really ugly. Like, that's like, I'm having a confusion moment over my feelings over Spores, if I'm gonna be honest with you. But I do want to state something that I feel is very important, because I know that some people are gonna say something stupid about this, and the phrase is, look how long it takes to completely strip armor. Okay? If you have somebody who says this to you, send this video to them, because they need it. Alright? One of the quotes that I hate is, look how long it takes to completely strip armor. Because you don't need to completely strip armor in order to be effective. So what we're going to do right now is, as you can see, we got a little Billy going on. Hi, Billy. How are you doing? So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm just going to do some melee, and I'm going to show you how long it takes to kill Billy on a regular. This is, of course, without a corrosive proc. This is just straight up Viral. As you can see here, it's taken a good while to whittle him down, right? You can see I'm going all in though. I'm giving it all I got. I'm doing knockdowns, I'm doing ground attacks. There's a lot of procs in there. So it took me 47. Notice one thing too, I did take off drifting contact from this melee. It took me 47 hits to take him down. Right? It's a good chunk of hits. It took quite a while. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna show you how long it takes to strip this armor, right? Because I'm gonna hear it, people are gonna be like, oh my god, it takes so long to strip armor, it's horrible. It takes about 6 to 10 seconds depending on how lucky you get with the procs, but as you can see, with my current build right now, we're usually getting about 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 1, but mainly 2. So it took quite a while, right? Now people are gonna be like, oh my god, look how long it took to strip off the armor, now I'm gonna go kill him, right? But the issue is, as corrosive starts to work, legitimately, you only need a couple of procs to go off before you can take him down. Of course, you know, I hit that guy like one smack and he was dead, right? That's the power of corrosive for you. But what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to cast it. As soon as I get him in my sights, I'm going to run up to him like I normally would. And then I'm just going to start going ham on him, right? Like, look at how much quicker that was taking him down. Like, it felt like we were whacking him for long periods of time trying to get our hits in, when really, you don't have to wait that long. And especially when this thing is spreading, like, on its own, there's really, like, you've got enemy, while I'm killing this guy, there are like 4 other guys in the background that are also having their armor stripped off. So for anybody who says that terrible, ridiculous, I don't understand mechanics quote, let them know ahead of time, you do not need to completely strip off the armor off of an enemy in order to be effective. Because that is the biggest, bullshit lie ever, right? So one more time, I'm gonna show you again one more time without any kind of corrosive right there doing the work, because I think I need to drive this point home. It's one of those things that really stress me out. Again, as you can see, we're doing the work. We're working. I mean, do you really need me to continue and keep going? Or can we just end it here? Because I really don't want to keep going for too long. I just, you know, just do a little bit of that action and he's gone, right? Simple does it. So now you know, send this to your friends if they need Jesus. Now with that little PSA out of the way, let's go ahead and have a chat about how I feel about Spores. Now, one of the things, if you'd been playing Saryn for a long period of time, you know that if you amped up the damage on your Spores when they were doing viral, keep in mind, that on lower levels, enemies would pretty much disintegrate straight out of the gate and you wouldn't get a good spread on Spores. Now with our new version of Spores, it's like Spores on crack. And I need to like stress this. I in no way am calling for a nerf. I love the damage output of this, and I think that the damage output of this is absolutely necessary to offset the power of viral that we've lost, but it does tend to make things a little bit more difficult. If you are on the star chart, or yeah, pretty much anywhere on the star chart, if you're anywhere on the star chart, it becomes a little bit hard to spread because of the fact that the damage ramps up so quickly. DE did make the statement that, oh, well, you're not going to need to cast Spores as often, Molt is going to last longer, yada, 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 so on and so forth. But I kind of feel along the lines of, well, if you're in lower level content, you're probably going to be needing to cast Spores a little bit, if not as often as you used to, maybe even a little bit more, because as the damage ramps up, the amount of targets you have on the field start dying off. And that is the big drawback to the ramping up damage. But again, I'm not against the ramping up damage. Because you see, when it comes to viral, viral was an amazing status proc that would literally half the health of every faction. Remember, corrosive works on armored factions, but viral worked on every faction and it was instantaneous. So if you have an enemy with 1,000,000 health, as soon as viral pops on, that's half a million. You've literally taken off 500,000 of that enemy's health, and as long as you can keep that viral proc on, you only have to work through 500,000 points of health instead of the full million. Now, of course, this is a little bit different when we're talking about armored targets, because armor inflates EHP, which is where corrosive comes into play. But we'll get into that in a second. So the reason we need that escalating damage is because if we're taking on the infested, or if we are taking on the corpus, because of the fact that, you know, they're not suffering from those negatives, we need something with enough oomph to basically half their health in the amount of time. So we're basically giving up the health halving capabilities for more damage. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. That's why we need the escalating damage. However, in lower levels, especially against the infested and the corpus, it is a little bit harder because they tend to just die. In fact, when I was doing my survival run, I noticed that my kills were fine. I was able to keep up kills really, really easily and get enough life support without too much of an effort, but I kept having to recast Spores because it would ramp up, everything would be dead, and I would have nothing to spread Spores from. So that's definitely what it's a positive, but it's different. It changes the gameplay. Now, speaking of changing gameplay, one of the things that I've been having an issue with is I don't really feel as much like, ooh, I'm Saryn the Spore Queen. I feel more like I'm Saryn, the mother of some, like, troublesome spores that are getting everywhere. It's one of those things where I feel like I'm chasing around my kids. I'm like, Spores, come here. Wait, you're over there. I'm like, which child do I take care of right now? So I definitely feel a little bit erratic when it comes to it because and this is one of my stories from the battlefield. Legitimately, what was happening was I would see my spore off in the distance, and I'd be like, okay, cool, it's taking on that cloud of enemies. So I'm running over to that cloud of enemies to help spread the spore. But by the time I get there, everything is dead, and now the spores have like moved to that side of the battlefield. So now I'm running over to that side of the battlefield. By the time I get there, everything's dead, and then after that, it's moving back around the other way, and I just feel like I'm chasing this cloud of spores to try to continuously keep it going. Don't get me wrong, I was dealing a lot of damage, and you know, I like was scoring top of the damage output field. Not that that's, you know, a necessity, but it's just one of those things where it's like I was doing everything that I was doing right, but it did feel like I was tending to these spores and babysitting them. And I don't necessarily feel like that's a bad thing. I feel that like that's just a major shift in gameplay. Because previous to this, you would toss down your spore, you would like hit an enemy a couple times, and then it would spread. Right? And then if you happen to run into a group of enemies that didn't have spores on them, you just cast spores on them again, and you just smack them a couple times, and then it would spread. And that's kind of like where we get down to the viral version versus the corrosive version. So the big thing that the growing pain, I guess I'm gonna say, with the viral version is everybody was used to debuff Saryn. That's what she was made for. And the viral version was great because of the fact that it wasn't doing that much damage, which means you have a lot of targets carrying the viral spore, right? So when you hit a group of enemies, those viral spores would pop. You'd have a lot of enemies to spread from. So you'd constantly see all of these fields of ticking damage, and it was amazing, but it wasn't that much damage that they were ticking. They were mainly there for the health halving properties of viral, which is fantastic. But it paired well with slash weapons because, you know, slash just directly goes after the health. Not slash procs, let me clarify that. Not slash weapons, but slash procs. And it helped the health of all enemies. So you got this great debuff version of Saryn. Now it's a little bit different because we have the corrosive version, right? It's a lot more damage focused than debuff focused, and it strips armored enemies, and then it starts dealing more and more and more damage to them. So what ends up happening is, yes, you're getting a lot of kills. You're getting more kills because the damage is, you know, not only stripping their defenses, but dealing more damage the longer that it stays on. But because of that, you have less targets to spread from. So sometimes you're running around and you're like, well, that one spore that I've got that is somewhere in this field is dealing like 3,000 points of damage, and if I spread that spore, it'll deal 3,000 points of damage to the enemies that are surrounding it, so I really should go after that spore. But you're also running around looking for one target that has that one spore. It could be, you know, in 2 rooms away, because the spores spread really well still. That's one I do think that I have to put out there. The spores still spread extremely, extremely well. So sometimes you're like chasing it all over the place to try to get that, like, I need to maintain that spore so that I can have this insane damage. So it is harder to maintain, and it almost reminds me a little bit of Gara's Splinter Storm. And Gara's Splinter Storm is one of those ones where, you know, she has the damage reduction, and the closer, when she gets up to enemies, she deals the damage. Now, of course, recasting her Mass Vitrify, and then we'll refresh the duration of that, and then shattering that Mass Vitrify into the shield increases its damage. So it was like you could get insane amounts of damage off of that shield, you know, the shield aura that she has, but you have to maintain it. That's very, very similar to what's happening now with the spores. You can get lots and lots of damage. I'm seeing like 2k damage easily, regularly. Like, that's a regular number. That's not one of those high-end numbers. Like, I posted a picture on Twitter where I was doing 10k into 11k by the end of the round. So it's one of those things where it's like, if you maintain it, you can get a lot of damage out of it. But at the same time, do you really want to chase that around when it's on like one single spore that you're not quite sure exactly where it is? So that's kind of where I'm torn about the whole situation, because legitimately, I do love, you know, the fact that they tweaked it to have corrosive to be able to strip off armor. I love the escalating damage numbers, but it is a big shift in play style. So right now, I'm not going to say that it's bad. I'm going to say that I'm kind of torn. Like, I got used to how it was before, so that's the way that I liked it, right? But now I'm kind of like trying to shift my playstyle into this, because before you would use slash procs because you have the viral, so cut the health in half, now you can use the viral. But the thing about it is, because of the fact that we have corrosive now, we can access a lot of our critical weapons. And having those critical weapons, you know, when you get your body count, when you get your blood rush on, and you start escalating those crits, or when your Smita, or when your, you know, Adarza goes off, any of those crit mods, you know you slaughter enemies left, right, and center. So as soon as I saw corrosive, I was like, bitch, I can bring out my viral slash critical hybrid weapons, start stacking up the damage from that, get a little viral off of the base weapon itself, a little bit of slash, you know, still best of both worlds, and corrosive really makes enemies weaker to that. So that's kind of my current stance on it at the moment. I'm going to continue to play. One thing that I do need to point out though, one of my favorite synergies, and this is something that I discovered, you're going to hear me say a name that and pair positivity to it that I haven't before, but I'm loving a little bit of Korra plus Saryn and Volt. I had an amazing run. Just with those three right there, Korra is great at holding enemies within spore range and basically giving you a dome of spored creatures that can spread it around, or her new ensnare is insanity as well. Same thing goes for Volt. He kind of holds enemies in place and allows the spores to spread really, really well from that too. So very, very happy with that team combo. Like I said, I'm going to go ahead and play around a little bit more. I've got a build that I like so far, and I'm going to see if I want to commit to that build to show you guys, so stay tuned for more coverage on that. And I know that DE is doing more patching and, you know, doing more fixes, so I'll let you know as soon as I know more. Regardless, that about does it for me for now. Leave your informed feelings now, because now you know, now you see it in action. I put up videos in the background, you can see it actually in play. Leave your feelings there as well. Are you excited? Are you scared? Did you like the old playstyle better, or are you feeling this new playstyle? Let me know in the comments below. But as always, remember, we are all in first look territory at the moment. I'm sure that, you know, maybe in a couple weeks down the line, we will have a game-breaking build with this. Regardless, that about does it for me. So as always, love somebody, hurt nobody, and touch your body. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.